Hey, Mr. Greer, thank you for being here. When I speak to my rice people and my shrimp people back home, they say that the tariff barriers and the subsidies by other countries for those products are so much that it is putting some of our shrimpers and some of our rice people either out of business or in incredible financial binds. And so the fact that the president is attempting to address these as well as the non-tariff trade barriers is incredibly important. Let me first say that. But I also hear from my producers that the mean tariff being selected to apply to a country may not account that for rice, for example, the tariff is much higher for that particular product, and that it is not adequate to address that which is taking place. Any thoughts on that, and how can we have something more particular for products which are really over tariffed?
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate that concern, and the tariff rate applied to many of these countries again was a countrywide rate. It wasn't product specific. My sense is if countries come to us and they expect to have some kind of a different plan, they will need to change these things, right? And they will have specific products, specific barriers that they would have to address. Right, or else, you know, the president, again, he's fixed his purpose. He wants to see production back here. He wants to see our agriculture producers doing well. And these countries just have to have reciprocal trade with us. And that means taking care of the types of barriers and tariff rates you're talking about.
So it sounds like you, one of the things I think they want to know is that since shrimp might be a relatively small part of trades with some of these countries, that the interest of, for example, shrimp will not be sacrificed in part of a greater whole.
No, I think, and I saw a really interesting article today in the New York Times on shrimp. You may have seen that, where the tariffs have actually given a bit of a lifeline to these shrimpers. And I think that, you know, if there's going to be any kind of change to any of this, and I'm not going to prejudge that, we have to make sure that our industries are protected adequately, so we don't go backwards with the deficit.
Let me ask, in the President's America First trading policy, there's several sections relating to free trade agreements and how they will be evaluated. Senator Bennett and I are working on an America's Act, which would be a hemispheric trade policy, which would have several purposes. One, to strengthen those ties. Secondly, to keep the Chinese from making the incursions that they are absolutely making throughout the hemisphere. Some are calling the Caribbean a Chinese lake. And so this would allow us to push back upon that. Can you share anything regarding the analyses of the free trade agreements we have within our hemisphere, and then specifically on countries like Argentina who would like an FTA with our country?
Certainly, I would say that we are first and foremost focused on addressing this emergency and the reciprocal tariff action and implementing it appropriately. With respect to relations in the hemisphere, any kind of trade arrangements with these trading partners, I think, need to be coupled with strong rules about third countries. What I don't want is a situation where these countries are using, their export platforms to incorporate content and goods from, China or other Asian countries, where we have a real issue with our deficit and offshoring of manufacturing. I would expect any kind of changes to these arrangements to be accompanied by changes in rules of origin to ensure that the United States and U.S. workers are really benefiting from these agreements.
So nothing from an FTA in general, but the specific of where it's being used to circumvent the intent of the FTA is the concern of the administration.
Yes, that's certainly a huge concern. And again, the president wants to see factories back here. The most certain way to not have a tariff is to build your factory in the United States. If people want to use other countries and insist on that, then we want to make sure that they're not using that to arbitrage for higher tariff jurisdictions to use them as an unfair export platform.
Let me ask you this. Louisiana has some of the largest ports in the nation by tonnage. And all the commodities going from the Midwest flow through my state going out to the world. Earlier, USTR proposed imposing like $1 million for every vessel built in China. And I'm told that if the Koreans have a fleet of 50 and 5 of the ships are built in China, then the $1 million would apply to all 50, not just to the ships that are built in China. Now, that would clearly impact a ship coming to the United States to offload. If you will, impact my ports and the ability of our goods throughout the nation to move through the Mississippi. Is USTR going to hang by that or considering modifying that? Can you kind of give us any idea about that?
So to address the lack of shipbuilding in the United States, USTR's proposed actions are just those. They're proposed actions. They're a series of potential remedies that could be used to incentivize shipbuilding in the U.S. They're not all going to be implemented. They're not all going to be stacked. We've asked for a lot of input, and we've had hearing on that. We've collected comments. We've reviewed it. I've met personally with certain stakeholders during that time period, and I think the President will look very carefully to make sure that we have the right amount of time and the right incentives to create shipbuilding here without impacting our commodity exports.
Okay, thank you. I yield.